here. We'll give 2 minutes or so for more people to join, and then we'll get it. All right, let's get started. So welcome everyone to our college application workshop. We're going to take a minute to introduce everyone on the panel who will be speaking today. Next slide, please. Okay, great. I'll go ahead and start. My name is Athia. I'm currently an R&D engineer. I'm doing my master's at UCLA in engineering management.
My name is Abdusalam. I'm an incoming freshman in college, and I'm studying bioengineering at UCLA.
My name is Adil. I'm an incoming junior at UC Davis, and I'm studying computer science.
My name is Shahana, and I'm an incoming student at freshman at Texas A&M, and I'm studying technology management.
This is our Q&A link, which we'll leave up here for about 2 minutes or so. Anybody who's interested in asking a question can go ahead and fill out the Google form. And at the end, during our Q&A session, we'll go ahead and answer them all at once. So we'll leave this up here for a minute or two. All right, let's get started. So just to briefly cover the agenda that we'll be going over today, we're going to go over general application basics that students should be on the lookout for when you're applying to college. Then we'll go into the 3 main categories of college applications, one being the Common App, second being the UC application for people who are applying to California schools, and the third being transfer applications for those who choose to go through the transfer route. Then we'll talk briefly about financial aid, how to apply with the FAFSA and look for scholarships, and just general advice from people who have gone through this process.
Okay, so the first topic we're going to cover is application basics. So when you're making your college list, which usually happens the summer before your senior year, you want to make sure you're covering a good range of colleges. So you have like 3 types of colleges you're going to apply to. So they're called Target, Safety, and Reach. So a target school is a school that you think would be a good fit for you and you have a fair chance of acceptance. So this might not be like the most prestigious of schools, but it is something that you would want to go to and you have a good chance of getting accepted. And then the second tier of school would be a safety school, which you're likely to get in, and whatever your profile is and whatever credentials you have exceeds the school's requirements. So this can include state schools or whatever your profile matches up with. Your credentials exceed these requirements, so you're more than likely to get in, which is it's always good to have safety schools in your college list because they're just something to rely back on in case something goes wrong or anything like that. And then the last type of school that should be in your college list are Reach colleges. So they're kind of tough to get into, they're challenging, and your credentials may be below the requirements or they may meet the requirements. But either ways, these are typically the more prestigious schools that it's still tough to get in, but you should apply because you still have a shot, right? So these are the 3 types of schools that you should, that would be on your college list. So for the application timeline, it's 4 years throughout high school. So up until your summer before senior year, you start to look into college apps and start to familiarize yourself with the process. And then around the summer before senior year to August and September, you begin writing your college essays and request recommendation letters from your teacher. Around October, you finish editing and you confirm your recommendation letters with your teacher. The recommendation letters is like a process in itself that's usually dealt by the teacher completely, but you just check in and make sure by October. And November through January is usually the submission deadlines. Based on which deadline you choose to submit, it usually falls between November 1st and the end of January. So this is when you submit your apps, test scores, and recommendation letters. And then the last part of this timeline is March to April when you receive your college decisions.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the Common App and what exactly it is, how it works, and how you can approach it as a student. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the Common App itself is actually just a streamlined way for you to apply to colleges. So when you apply to college, it's not a separate application that you have to fill out to each school. There's, except for UCs and except for very special cases, almost all schools use the Common App, which is a platform where you enter your credentials, your information, and you're able to apply to all schools from there. So the dashboard part of it is basically an app where you can select the schools that you want to apply to, and then all the information that you need to apply to those schools is given to you, and you're able to submit your essays from there and your information. So My Colleges is where you select your colleges, and there's a college search function as well, and you can also do your financial get some financial aid information from there as well. Okay, let's move on to the Common App. So first slide, next slide. All right, so the Common App essay, this is the most foundational part of your application. It's the part of the application that you should probably spend the longest time on when it comes to the Common App. So the Common App essay, what is it meant for? The Common App essay is meant to showcase your interests, your personality, and your background. What it's not meant to showcase is your grades, academic performances, or just to be a point or an opportunity to brag about your accomplishments. So it's an opportunity for colleges to get to know you. It's an opportunity for you to showcase your personality and what you value as important. What are your values? One other thing to note that it's not school specific. So you should be able to write a Common App essay that is about you and about your personality that you can send to each different school. So don't write anything school specific in your Common App essay. Okay, next slide. Okay, so there are 7 different prompts for the Common App, and it's 650 words max. Now, I could go over all the prompts, but they're online and they're the same every year. But what I will say is that all the prompts are very wide, and for any topic that you could possibly have in mind, there's definitely a prompt for it. The prompts are extremely flexible, and there's even a prompt that literally asks you to write about anything you want. So don't worry about trying to write for a prompt. Try to utilize the prompt to enhance your topic. So the next point is that you want to focus in the Common App essay specifically, you want to focus on telling a story rather than recapping your accomplishments. You have to tell a story. Think about this from the college's viewpoint. They want to get to know the personality of their applicants. So the first thing you want to do is select your topic. I would spend about 20% of the time doing this because there's a huge difference between having a good topic and a bad topic, and it can make or break the whole idea. A good topic is something that is both interesting, that can be well written and detailed, and something that reveals a lot about your personality and your values. A bad topic is something that doesn't showcase your personality, is kind of boring, or an inappropriate topic. So a good topic would be something like your interest in chess and how it helped you meet different people at tournaments and how this helped you foster a community, something like that. It shows growth, it shows personal interest, it shows personality. But a bad topic would be a cliche topic like, I got injured in my sports tournament and this is how I recovered. Or another bad topic would be talking about someone else. You always want to talk about yourself in your Common App essay. So in most cases, writing an essay about somebody you know or your parents is going to take the focus away from you, which will negatively affect your Common App essay. Your Common App essay should be a story that reveals different parts of your characteristics, which are good. And then obviously you don't want to reveal characteristics about yourself that are bad. That just is simple. Then you want to outline multiple ideas. Many people just outline one idea. I think this isn't really a good idea because once you come up with multiple topics, you just outline them because it doesn't take that long and you might decide that one topic is better than the other. So brainstorm a couple good topics and then outline them. Just take 10% of the time to do that. And then you should just take a couple of weeks just to write out all the essays in essay form, but don't try to stay under the word count. Don't try to make it sound fancy or well written. Just write them all out just to get a good start. And the thing to remember here is perfection is the enemy of progress. And then the last thing is cutting down and polishing your work. That's where you're going to spend most of the time. And what you want to do here is focus on the details, focus on how it reads, and get feedback. Okay, next slide. Okay, the next thing is supplementals. So there's the Common App essay, and then there's supplementals. So supplementals are the second biggest thing. Now, so unlike the Common App essay, they're specific to each university. So let's say you're applying to Santa Clara University, right? Santa Clara University will have a couple of supplemental essays. I think they have 2 that are specific to it, but not to any other school, right? So here you can actually write about the college specifically. So one of the reasons that they ask supplemental questions is to understand why you're applying, understand what you've done, and understand what you will contribute. So they're trying to get a view of you as they're trying to understand your academic profile essentially. And there's other parts of it too, like your extracurricular profile, your side interests and hobbies, but those are all included, right? So the tip number 1 I would say is think about it from the college's standpoint. What will they want you to contribute? What do they want to hear? And tip number 2, like I said in the Common App essay, you want to tell a story, you want to be personal, you want to have a lot of imagery, be well written. Here you just want to be concise. The being well written really doesn't matter. You just have to cram as much good information in there as you can. Okay, next slide. Okay, so how to write the supplementals. I'm just going to go with the 2 most common supplemental essays, which are why school and why major. So why school is, for example, why Santa Clara University or why Harvard, right? Why do you want to come to Harvard? But the better way to think about this essay is why are you a good fit for Harvard? Write it like that. Why are you a good fit for Harvard? So the first thing you want to do for these essays is brainstorm and come up with a list of reasons that you would like to go to the school or why you think you're a good fit for this school. So both. The reasons that you want to avoid are ranking. So never write in your essay that I want to come to this school because it's ranked very high. That is not a good move. So you want to write about unique things that stand out to you. Go on the website and write about the number 1 thing that you like about the school that you also value. So for example, when I was applying to Brown University, the thing that I liked the most at Brown University was this thing called open curriculum, where you're able to pick whatever classes you want, up to some extent. And then I connected that to the fact that I was interested in both like bioengineering and political science. So it would allow me to do both, right? So you have to connect something personal and something that you will contribute to what the school has. That's the point of the supplemental. Why school? Then why major? Why major is more specific. It's asking you what major you want to do, what makes you qualified, what have you done in the past, what do you envision yourself doing? And here you basically want to rehash all of your accomplishments in the major. So let's say you went to a research program or a summer camp, or you have a side hobby that relates to your major, something like that. You want to connect that to your passion in that major, and then you have to connect that to what you will do in that major at the school. So you can even say things like, when I come to this school, if I get into the school, I will work with so and so professor in their lab. That it's completely fine to do. Yeah. So the things you don't want to do is mention rankings again, brag too much, or write in a complex manner. Just write simple. And lastly, do not repeat information. You don't want to repeat any information that you have in the Common App essay, because that's also going to the schools.
All right, so I'll be talking about the UC application. So the UC system is comprised of 9 campuses, 4 of them in NorCal and 5 in SoCal. They all are public University of California schools, so they all have similar tuition rates. Some have different costs of living depending on the area that it's in, but for the most part, a lot of the dorming rates, the apartment rates are on similar ranges. So a lot of these belong to one system, and they all have one application for any number of schools that you're applying for. So for example, if you're interested in 3 of the UCs, like 1 in SoCal, 2 in NorCal, you apply using the same application. You don't have to apply multiple times. The only difference will be that in that application, you'll be able to select which schools and which majors you'll want to do in those schools. So these sections are the sections that you'll see on the actual UC application. First being just a section about you. This is pretty standard for any application where it has your legal information, family information, stuff like that. The second is the campuses and majors. This is something you really want to look into, where you're making a decision about which campuses you want to apply to, which of these 9 schools will be the best fit for you. And that doesn't mean you have to limit yourself to applying to 1 or 2. You could apply to all 9, but there is an application fee, so be mindful of that. And additionally, really choose which schools you can see yourself at and which schools would be the best fit for you. Sometimes it's not valuable to apply to multiple schools just because everybody else is doing it if you can't see yourself going there. So if there's a school where you're like, I absolutely cannot go there, I don't like the area, I don't like the program, don't apply there. It would be a waste of your time, energy, and money. The third and fourth sections are what I'm going to focus on a little bit more. So the academic history and test score sections is where you're going to be talking about your grades. So in this section, it's very important to refer to your official transcript. So to get that from your school and not do it from memory, it's important to report all the schools that you went to. So if you went to multiple high schools, community colleges, to report all the courses and grades exactly as they appear on your official transcript and academic records. As for the test scores, if you took the ACT, SAT, I know for UCs, they're not necessarily required, and they won't consider it when making the admissions decisions, but they may be used as an alternative method of fulfilling minimum requirements for eligibility for certain courses. So they still have that section where you can put in the test scores. The activities and awards section, this is where you have the opportunity to tell the school what achievements you've had over the last 4 years in high school. And one thing to focus on here is that they're really looking for quality over quantity. So if you've done 100 different activities, but only 5 or 6 of them are really meaningful to you, where you've spent a lot of time and really made an impact, those would be the ones that you'd include here. I believe you have 20 spaces to include different activities and awards over 6 different categories, which I'll go over. But again, the point here is to be very selective with what you want to put on there, because this is what the college is going to see to kind of create a portfolio to understand what kind of person you are. So the 6 categories in the activity and award sections are the first being award or honor. So if you've gotten any national, state, school awards, whatever it is, you can put it in that section. Second is educational preparation programs. A lot of universities have summer programs where you can do like an academic enrichment program or something like that. And that's where this would go. A lot of people, these cost a lot of money. So many people don't actually fill out this part, like this category, and tend to fill out one of the other categories. So it's okay if you don't have any. The third is extracurricular. This is the one that tends to get the most full for a lot of students. So this includes any sports that you did, any activities that you did outside of school. Fourth is other coursework. So if you took classes that are required for UC admission or don't necessarily fit their A through G requirements, you can put it in this fourth area. Fifth and sixth are volunteering and work experience. The important distinction here is one is for nonprofit organizations, things that you do not for money, and the second being where you get paid, so for work experience. Again, it's totally okay if you don't have work experience, but I would really suggest getting into community service activities throughout your high school experience in order to be able to, one, write about it in your essays, which we'll go over later, and two, obviously fill this section. And then I didn't include this here. This is sort of a smaller section where there's a scholarship area where you can select the different scholarship categories that apply to you. We'll go over scholarships later in the presentation, but this is just a short part of the UC application itself. It's not long at all. But the bulk of your application, the majority of your focus will go to the personal insight section, where you'll have to choose between answering 8 personal insight questions, which are short essays, about 350 words, and you'll choose 4 of them and write 4 short essays. Next slide, please. So I'm going to try to go into a little bit of detail about each of the questions so we can break them down. There's 8 questions total. You get to choose 4 and write about them. So let's go over them really briefly. First is the question about leadership. It's to describe an example of any leadership experience that you've had where you've positively influenced other people and contributed to certain group efforts. So this doesn't necessarily mean that you were the president of a club or some sort of organization. This could even mean something like where you took the lead or an initiative in organizing an event or a certain project. This could mean when you mentored another person, tutored a student, took care of a family member, basically when you're acting in charge of a certain task. And an important thing to keep in mind with all of these essays is that it's really how you tell the story. You could have done something very supposedly insignificant in the grander scheme of things, but if you've made an impact on one singular person or one singular organization or one small group, that is still something meaningful that you could write about in any one of these essays. The second one is the creativity essay, where they ask you how you express your creative side, if that's through problem solving or innovative thinking, if that's through art. So if you have a creative talent that is, conventionally creative, such as art, theater, whatever it is, music, you can write about that, but this doesn't necessarily have to, you don't have to limit yourself to what is conventional creativity. So this could be something where you like problem solving and like doing something for fun related to problem solving. But the general idea here is that how does your creativity influence your decision making? They want to learn what kind of thinker you are through this essay. And so they want to see what kind of person you are outside of the classroom and how your creativity can relate to your future career and your future major and your future as a student in the college that you're applying to. The third is talking about your greatest talent or skill. And so this can be a variety of things for different people. So how have you developed or demonstrated that skill or talent over time? And one thing I will talk about later more, but in all of these essays, you really want to focus on the impact that you have with each one of these things. So for leadership, creativity, talent, what have you done with that? Who have you touched with that? What impact have you had with these things? But for number 3 specifically, like a talent that may come naturally to you, something that you've worked hard to develop. Is it something that you've furthered inside the classroom, outside of the classroom? How do you fit that into your schedule? And so there's lots of different things that you can talk about here, but be mindful of, keeping it to answering the prompt and overall showing the admissions officer what impact you've had. The fourth is how you've taken advantage of an educational opportunity or worked to overcome an educational barrier. So this is kind of two different questions in one, but be careful to only answer one of those, or at least focus on one. You could answer both, but you have to be very careful about how you go about it. I would suggest just focusing on one of them. So an educational opportunity can be anything that's added value to your educational experience and better prepared you for college. But an educational barrier is something, or like an adversity that you've faced in the academic arena and how you've overcome that. One thing to be mindful of is that if you're answering the educational barrier question, do not confuse that with prompt number 5, which is your personal adversity question. This is where they ask you, what's the most significant challenge that you face? So this is outside of the academic arena. You could talk about challenges that you faced academically, but if you're answering number 4 and you're talking about academic challenges already, you don't want to be repetitive and do that in number 5. So in number 5, you can talk about any personal challenges, any academic challenges, again, being mindful of number 4. But the key here is to answer why that challenge was significant to you and how you overcame that. Because again, the goal is to show admissions officer what kind of person you are. And the way you show them that is they look at how you've overcome certain things in your life and what that shows about you. Prompt number 6 is about an academic subject that inspires you. So this could be inside or outside the classroom. So if there's a specific subject that you took in high school, you can talk about that. If there's something that you, like a course you took in community college that was really interesting, you can talk about that. If there's any other course that you took just for fun or something that you simply like to further your interest in outside of the classroom, you can also talk about that. So don't limit yourself to academic subjects like math or English. This could be anything that you do outside of the classroom, inside or outside of the classroom. And one thing that I want to note here is that you really want to connect this with any of the volunteer work that you've done. If there's any internships that you've done, any employment, summer programs, whatever it is, connect all of these things with experiences that you've had. So that really shows that you've learned from these experiences, that you can write about them, that it's impacted the person that you are, and that you'll carry that forward with you in your future as a student at the university. Number 7 is the community service prompt. This is pretty straightforward, where they ask you, what have you done to make your school or community a better place? So if there's a specific community service act or organization that you were part of, that you really put a lot of time and energy and effort into, this would be a great one to write about here. If you've done a lot of community service over your 4 years in a lot of different places, try not to fill this essay as like a resume of all those places where you've worked. Really focus on 1 or 2 where you feel like it's closest to your heart, where you feel like you've made the most impact, that you genuinely liked the most, and then write about that. And number 8 is very, very open-ended. Beyond what's already shared in the application, they ask you what makes you a strong candidate for admissions to UC schools. And so this one is not as often chosen by students, just because it's a little bit harder to answer, because they ask you a lot of questions already. So you're kind of like, what more can I talk about? But if there's a special experience that you've had in your life, or if there's something that none of these prompts kind of really you can answer, but there's something else that you want to share with the admission officer that you think would make you a good candidate for these schools, then this is the place to talk about it. There's kind of 3 categories that these personal insight questions fall into. So prompts 1 and 7, the leadership and community service prompts, are really talking about your engagement with and impact on other people. So what have you done to make the world or other people's lives a better place? And how did that experience help you and change you as a person? Prompts 2 and 6 are talking about you as a person directly. So like your inner creativity and academic subject that really inspires you. So this is internally, not necessarily things that you go out and do, but things that fuel you as a person. And then the remaining prompts 3, 4, 5, and 8 are about your achievements and accomplishments. And I'll talk about this on the next slide, but don't parrot what you put in your previous sections, like the activities and awards sections. Don't list that out again in one of these essays and say, hey, I got all these awards, that's my greatest talent or skill. Don't do that. It's really important to tell a story about yourself, but because the word count in all of these personal insight questions are quite low compared to the common applications. You have to be very careful about what you're putting out there because these are all the words that you get to show the admissions officer that you deserve a spot at their university. Next slide, please. So general tips for approaching the personal insight question. I've repeated this multiple times, but ironically, avoid repetition. So you don't want to say again and again that I've done X, Y, and Z multiple times. They already know that. They're going to read your application multiple times. But what you want to do is really tell a story about who you are as a person. So instead of repeating that you've done all these things, use that to sort of tell them how these experiences have created an impact on you and others and how that builds you as a person. So they're trying to compose a sketch of you as a person and say, is this person going to be a good fit for our university? So again, your goal is to be telling a story using all these puzzle pieces in order to put them together and show them who you are as a person. The basic essay outline that you should follow, and you don't necessarily have to, but this is a pretty easy way to go about the essays, is you can start with an anecdote. So this could start with dialogue, a story, whatever it is to sort of set the tone for the essay. You want to spend very little time on this. So don't spend half of your essay or even 30% of your essay on an anecdote. It's kind of just to get you started. Second is the conflict. So for example, if you take prompt number 5, where it talks about a challenge, this is where you introduce what that challenge is. And again, you don't want to spend a lot of time talking about this. The third and the fourth parts of the essay are where you should be spending a majority of your time. How you resolved that conflict and what impact it had. And this impact is on yourself and on others depending on the prompt. So again, I'll take prompt 5 as an example where if you've introduced a challenge in your life, you want to spend a majority of your essay talking about how you resolve that challenge. And be careful when you do this because you want to sort of talk about what skills you have and what you did to overcome that challenge that, again, shows who you are as a person. And finally, what impact it had. So how did you grow from this experience? How did you change from this experience? How did you impact other people from this experience? And what will you carry forward from this experience? So the resolution and impact should consist of about like 60 to 70% of the essay, which again is not a lot of words because you only have 350 total. So be very, very careful with what you write and really think about what you want to include here. Avoid parroting what's in the rest of your application. So again, in your activities and awards section, if you've listed out all your extracurriculars, don't dump them all into the essays again. Focus on 1 or 2 experience and what impact it had. Impact is the buzzword here where you really want to focus on how you grew as a person and how you've changed. Another thing is this sort of comes later on after you've written your essay, but to focus heavily on the actual quality of the writing. So a very easy mistake that a lot of people do is like grammatical errors or poor sentence structure or like a lacking transition in their essays and stuff. And so those are easily avoidable things if you get someone or a couple of people to edit your essay. So you want to finish them early enough so that you can get people's feedback to avoid easy mistakes that are very obvious red flags to admissions officers. And then finally, this is almost something that's obvious, but a lot of people don't actually do it, is to answer the question directly. So for example, I'll take prompt 6 as an example where it's the academic subject. Don't tell an entire story about an academic subject that you really like, but don't act like without mentioning what the subject is. So for example, if you're really interested in biology and you're telling a whole story about how you're inspired by biology, you volunteered at the hospital, but nowhere in the essay does it actually say that biology is the subject that inspires you, you're not answering the question. Be very careful to answer the question directly and then, go through with the rest of your essay. Next slide. Yeah. And that about covers the UC applications.
Okay, so now we'll move on to the transfer applications. These are just adding on to what was already discussed in the UC application. There's some minor differences. We'll go over them. So first of all, we're going to discuss why you would take the transfer route. So these are the same pros and cons we had from the first college preparation session. So some of the pros of community college are that it saves time and money. You get to get a smoother transition into college. You build up a good academic foundation and you get to be flexible with what you want to take as coursework. And then the cons are limited university experience since you're going to be joining in the third year, limited resources because you won't have access to like research facilities at a community college, social disconnection. You probably won't be able to make friends as easily since you joined 2 years later than everyone else. And then the lack of mental growth, which is just you're going to be a lot younger than other people because you're going to be 2 years ahead if you take the CHESP route. And then eligibility requirements, there's a lot more requirements when it comes to the transfer route as compared to the first year route, because you can make up with extracurriculars in the first year, but like in transfers, there's a heavier emphasis on the academic side of things. And another thing I wanted to mention is you can take the transfer route if, let's say, for example, that you applied to all your colleges in your senior year of high school, but you didn't really get into where you wanted to go. You can still take the transfer route and still apply to that university and still have a chance of being admitted at that university. And a lot of colleges will recommend this if you get rejected from that college. So now we'll go over the application timeline for community college transfer. So we already discussed like what you would want to do in the 2 years that you will be in community college, but what you need to know for the application timeline is first of all, there's multiple supplemental applications like the tag application, the TAP application, which we'll discuss as well. And there's also the main one, which is the UC application. So the tag application is submitted before the UC application, and you would submit your TAB application on September 30th. So you'd want to work on that throughout the summer. And that just tells colleges what courses you've taken so far and how you'll be meeting the eligibility requirements. And then September to November is when you'd want to research your majors, and start writing your college essays. It's important to make sure you know what majors to take, because each college has their own majors, and they might even have multiple majors which are geared towards what you want to do. So you want to research each of the majors and see which one fits you best. And then writing college essays, there is a minor tweak as compared to writing college essays for first year admission, and we'll get to that in the next slide as well. So after that, you on November 30th is when the UC application is due. So that's just everything that was discussed in the previous section of this presentation. So that's the updating your academic records, your extracurriculars, your personal insight questions, etc. And then on January 31st, there's something called the Transfer Academic Update, which you need to submit. And this is because, since you're a community college student, you'll only be able to report the courses you've taken up till the fall semester before your transfer, and you won't be able to put in the grades for that for those fall classes because the application is due before those classes end if you're in a semester system. So in the Transfer Academic Update, this is your chance to update your grades. So you'll update your grades for the fall semester, and if your college offers a winter session, you can also update the grades for your winter session, assuming they're released before the January 31st deadline. And then, as usual, similar to first year applications, the admission decisions come out around March to April. So you can expect it around late March until the end of April. And one difference between both of these applications is that you have until June 1st to submit your SIR as compared to the May 1st deadline for first year students. So now going on to the UC transfer application, it's similar to the UC application for first year students, but there are some minor differences. So the first one is in the personal insight question. In the first year application, you get to choose 4 of the prompts. In a transfer application, you have 1 required prompt, and then you get to choose 3 other prompts from what was listed in the previous section. So the required prompt is it's going to ask, please describe how you have prepared for your intended major, including your readiness to succeed in upper division courses once you enroll at the university. And some tips for writing this is focus on what you have done that shows your interest in that specific major. That can be internships, other work experience like teaching, and also you can focus on some of the coursework you've taken to show that you have academically challenged yourself to be ready for that upper division level coursework. And also another key difference in the UC application is you do not need to enter your high school coursework. You only need to enter your community college coursework. Some universities do require your high school transcript, but you only need to submit that once you have been admitted. You do not need to submit any high school records on the UC application itself. And also a higher emphasis is placed on academics and major relevant extracurriculars. So in first year applications, you'd focus on it's a more holistic approach. So you'd focus on yourself as a person and what makes you a good fit. In a transfer application, the universities want to see how you'll be able to fit in with their college, because you're entering as a third-year student. You don't have much time to develop yourself. So they want to see how have you made yourself ready for that for the major that you have chosen. And then also the last difference is that it has a more selective admission criteria. So there's minimum GPA requirements, where if you don't meet those requirements, then your chances of admission into those universities are 0 to none. And then moving on, we have the transfer admission guarantee. So this is something we touched on briefly in the previous presentation, but the transfer admission guarantee is a application which you submit before the UC application, and it's somewhat of a guaranteed admission program, but we'll discuss that at the end of this. So like we said earlier, the tag application is submitted a month prior to the UC applications, and it is a program that offers students the opportunity to petition for guaranteed admission. But the catch is that you need to meet some eligibility requirements, which can include GPA, unit restrictions, so you generally to be around 60 units, and coursework requirements, which will be outlined by agreements, and we'll touch on that later in this presentation as well. So this program is not suitable for students who prefer flexibility in their academics, because the tag application is going to it's an agreement essentially. So it's going to say you have to meet these requirements, and then we'll give you admission. So if you don't think you'll be able to meet those specific requirements, then doing the tag application isn't really the best idea. And the tag application is best suited for students who are fixed on their academic goals after thorough research. So students who know what they want to do and are willing to do what it takes. Compared to contrary belief, most students do not apply through tag. The two main reasons for this is that it's restricted to certain majors. And so for example, computer science, there's no tag for computer science anywhere. And the second reason is that it's not really guaranteed admission. Basically, it's more of an early admission program. So if you complete the tag and the application gets accepted, the university will say, okay, we've looked at what you've done so far, and we're ready to accept you. If you're able to meet these requirements, we'll give you guaranteed admission into our university. And if you fail to meet those requirements, then you don't get admission into that program. So that's one of the reasons that most students do not apply through tag. So another program which is similar to tag is the TAP, which is the Transfer Alliance Program. And this is specific towards UCLA. So the tag application is for 6 UC campuses. Those are Santa Cruz, Santa Barbara, Irvine, Davis, Merced, and Riverside. So UC Berkeley, UCLA, and UC San Diego do not participate in the tag program. So UCLA has a substitute for this, which is the TAP. And this is a specific UCLA-specific program aimed for transfer students, and it's aimed at facilitating a successful transition from community colleges into UCLA. So it'll give you a basic idea of what to expect when you come to UCLA, what courses you would have need to take to ease your transition into UCLA and be successful once you transfer. And it offers academic support, resources, and mentorship for students. You'll be able to meet with counselors who are able to guide you through the process, and also provides workshops, seminars, events to aid in these in your academic and personal growth. And it also focuses on building a sense of community and belonging among transfer students. So you'll be able to meet with other transfer students who have done the TAP program as well. And TAP program is generally aimed towards students who are more academically motivated. So you'll be able to meet with some more academic like-minded students. And the change, and also it aims to improve the acceptance and graduation rates for transfer students at UCLA. So compared to, and I have personal experience with this, so if you do the UCLA TAP, you generally have a higher chance of admission than if you were applied as a regular student. And there's also other specific programs, which I'll get into later, such it's called the honors program. So if you complete the honors program and complete TAG, they're in general, on average, the acceptance rate into UCLA for transfer students is 80%, which is a lot compared to the around, I think average is 16% for regular transfer students. And also the last point about the TAP is that it creates a support network to address the unique needs of transfer students. So this program is aimed specifically at transfer students. And like I said, we're going to discuss the honors transfer program. So this is offered at many California community colleges across the state. Some examples I can name off the top of my mind are Foothill, Las Positas College, Mission College. And each honors program has its own different requirements. And the honors program is designed for academically motivated students to expand their interests. And it also provides the opportunity for students to delve into more challenging coursework, essentially. And this can vary because the honors transfer program at my community college, the way I did it was I was able to choose a project that I wanted to take on with simultaneously with the course. And I had to put in around 25 or more hours of extra work to earn honors credit for that class. Whereas in other community colleges, it will simply just be an honors course. And the honors course can be, you'll have to complete an extra essay that the regular class section would not. And the honors transfer program provides the opportunity to connect with professors and like-minded students. So like I said, when I was doing the honors program, I had the opportunity to talk with many of my professors, get guidance from them, and get insights about about my career path. And they also guide you through the projects that you decide you want to do. So it's a great opportunity for you to grow your personal interests as well. And the honors program also encourages critical thinking and in-depth research. And this is actually really good. It looks really good on your college application. And you can even write about this in your personal insight questions. I think one of them that you can include this is problem number 4, which you describe a educational opportunity you take advantage of. And of course, it prepares students for successful transfer to four-year institutions, and it also demonstrates your ability to endure high academic rigor and university research, which a lot of universities love to see. And also includes priority consideration for university admissions. Like we mentioned earlier, if you do UCLA TAP with the honors transfer program, you have around an 80% chance of getting in compared to the regular 16%. So now we'll go over some of the transfer application resources. So there's another tab, which is this is a tool that UC students, transfer students can use to plan their coursework. It's the Transfer Admission Planner, and basically it'll have like a list of agreements, and you can go in and enter the coursework you've taken and see if you're on track to meet the eligibility requirements of the specific universities you want to apply to. And also it assists in choosing the right courses. So you'll get a better idea of what you need to take and not take, and make sure you're not taking any courses that won't be useful. And also enhances the chance of a competitive transfer application because you'll have a head start when it comes to planning your coursework. You'll be able to put yourself out as a more worthy candidate. And then the last one, which is used by pretty much all transfer students across the state, is assist.org. So the assist.org contains agreements between every community college and every UC for a variety of majors. So you go to the website, you put in your community college and the UC campus that you want to look into, and it will give you a list of majors that the university has agreements for. And you can go to those agreements, see what are the minimum GPA requirements, minimum unit restrictions, other eligibility requirements you need to meet, and it'll give you a list of courses that you'd want to complete as a part of the lower division requirement. And yes, it also identifies the required lower division requirements and minimum eligibility criteria. So now we'll move on to the financial aid and FAFSA.
All right. Can you go next slide? Okay, so FAFSA is basically the form that you use in order to request financial aid quotes. It's a government form, and what you basically need to know is that it's, if you want to have income-based financial aid for your school, many schools say on their financial aid website that they will match demonstrated needs. So what that means, what demonstrated need means is what the FAFSA gives you. So once you go on the FAFSA, you put in all your information. It's basically like a website. It'll return you a bunch of different figures, a bunch of different numbers. The one thing that you need to remember is the EFC, which is estimated family contribution. It will return that number. What that basically means is how much your family is expected to pay by the government, and how they calculate that. It's basically based on your various expenditures and income and things like that, what you put into the form. For example, if you have students who are if you have siblings who are in college at the time, then your EFC goes down. But if you have siblings that aren't in college, it doesn't change. So it's very hard to actually know what it'll be until you enter everything into the form. So what you want to do as soon as possible, like, as soon as the application cycle starts, as soon as the school year starts, go try that out, try the FAFSA, put in all your information and see what the EFC is, because then you'll know whether or not you're going to need to apply for different forms of financial aid. Because many times the EFC, the financial contribution estimate that they give you, is a lot less than what you'd expect. It's a lot less than what you'd need. Yeah. So yeah, like it says on the slide, you use your parents' tax returns information, etc., household size, and that all goes into the EFC. So here's the timeline. The senior year is about to start. Many of you may be starting within the next week. FAFSA opens in October, but many of the schools will say, like, we want FAFSA done by December/January, right? Like many schools will have their early deadline in November, but then FAFSA due at the regular deadline. So the regular decision deadline will be around end of December, early January. So that's when many schools will say, here's when we want our FAFSA. So in a lot of cases, you can apply to a school early and then submit your FAFSA later. But it's always better to just get it done early so you don't miss the deadline. Yeah. Okay, now along with FAFSA, if you get a decent estimated family contribution on the FAFSA, then you can use that to get financial aid. Many different schools will match, the amount of money that you need, 100%, no exceptions barred. But a lot of times that's not your EFC isn't enough, it's not low enough, and you still have to pay the whole tuition, but that may not be an affordable possibility for you. So in this case, what you want to do is try to apply for scholarships. And if you're in the situation where finances are going to be a big part of your university life and affect your life in university, I would definitely apply to scholarships, whether or not you were going to do the FAFSA, or whether or not you've gotten your FAFSA results back, whether or not you've gotten financial aid. You should still do it. And there's different types of scholarships. First thing is undergrad awards. Undergrad awards, usually you can't really apply to them right now, but you can definitely select schools and select majors in which you'd be able to get an undergrad award. An undergrad award is usually like an award that you could gain as an undergrad that would be a grant or a gift off of your tuition. So it would be money off of your tuition. Another thing, the thing that you want to be aiming for as an applicant is merit scholarships. So merit scholarships are essentially like a competition. They're only offered to a very few number of students, but you basically write an essay for it. You can submit more information for it, and they'll do a selection process and you have a chance to win a scholarship. Now, many schools have a very specific process for this. For example, if you're applying to USC, University of Southern California, in order to get access to the merit scholarships, you have to apply early action. So you have to apply like around I think the due date's November 1st. You have to apply before that. You have to specify it as an early action school so that you have to see if that's a sacrifice you're willing to make. There's also department scholarships and grants which you can apply for. Remember, all of this is going to be on either the financial aid website or the specific department website within the school. The biggest tip I would say is call the financial aid office and visit the financial aid website. Like, make sure you know the financial aid website of your top schools or schools that you see as a target, like the back of your hand. You should really, really be familiar with it. And calling the financial aid office is a big one. One of my friends needed some money off of school. He literally called the financial aid office and he got 20,000 off just after a couple of phone calls. So there's really so many doors open. Colleges are willing to throw money at you. You just have to make the initiative first. There's also certain schools that will give you a lot of money just academics wise. So for example, at the University of Arizona, this is part of undergrad awards, but it's like a tuition award. They will give you almost full tuition off. So their tuition is $35,000. They'll give you $30,000 off if you have a 4.0 GPA all through high school and you've shown good interest in extracurriculars. So basically, if you have good grades, 4.0 and above in high school, that's already going to open a huge number of opportunities for you, scholarship wise. The external scholarships are a bit more tricky. I think they're really looking for the big ticket scholarships like Coca-Cola scholars, and that's the one that comes off the top of the head for me. But other ones, they're really looking for exceptional people. So if you believe that you have a good chance of getting in, it'll be harder to win one of these scholarships than to get into any school in the country when it comes to these big ticket scholarships, like things that will pay for your full tuition. But you should look around, you should ask around, apply. It'll be just like applying for a college. So you'll go on the website, you'll fill in your essays, you'll fill in your information, and you'll submit an essay. You'll submit your application. But there's also other scholarships that are smaller level. So one example that I did was called the Posse Scholarship. You can see it on the bottom of the page right there. So basically what that was is one of my friends had won the scholarship in 3 or 4 years back. And because of that, he was able to nominate me. And that's how the nomination process works. You have to be nominated by a previous winner. So yeah, I asked around, I got that. And then there was like 300 kids in the competition. There was like 3 rounds of interviews. I managed to get to the end, and I decided not to take the scholarship in the end because they only let you apply to that one school. But it was a good opportunity, and if I needed that financial burden taken off of me, that would have been a great option for me. And all it took was just me asking my friend to recommend me to this thing. So really just ask around for people that you know, and they'll be willing to help. So for those smaller scholarships, like the one I was talking about, and other scholarships, you can check on scholarships.com. I know College Board has a bunch of scholarships. Just do online research, and that's where you're going to find out how to do it. Yeah.
Right, so the last section is application advice. So the first subject I'm going to be talking about is majors. So make sure you check the list of majors for every single school you apply to. Each school offers different majors, and that includes the UCs. Not every UC, or every UC offers different majors and different programs. And same with state schools, and like every school you apply to, just make sure you check the list of majors. One thing I'm grateful that my counselor made me do is that he made me make a list of all the majors I was interested in for every school. And then after that, after I figured out which majors I was interested in, after I narrowed it down, he made me look at 4-year course plan, for example, UC Irvine Information Systems 4-year course plan, to make sure that I really knew what I was getting into, or what program I was applying to ensure that what major I applied to for each school was something I would be enjoying studying at the university. And so if you have various majors you're interested in and you can't decide which one, pick one that suits your profile the best. For example, I have friends that they had a broad range of what they could apply to. They could apply to biology or biochemistry or chemistry, but when they narrowed it down, they looked at what their profile highlights. For example, at the Science Olympiad, maybe they won an award for some sort of biology topic or something, or maybe their profile is stronger for biology. So then they went through with applying for biology. And my last tip is don't apply to easier majors in hopes to switch once you're admitted. That's not a good strategy at all, because you want to be admitted to something that you are 100% confident in that you'll be able to pursue. If you apply to an easier major and then you're like, okay, maybe I'll be able to switch once I'm admitted, that's not guaranteed. And one example of this is at UC Berkeley. There's 2 computer science programs they offer. The first one is EECS, which is Electrical Engineering and Computer Science. That's their only Bachelor of Science computer science program they have. There's no individual Bachelor of Science in computer science. It's a combined program, Electrical Engineering and Computer Science. And then they have Computer Science, which a Bachelor of Arts program, which is, both of them are different programs. As you can see in the picture, it kind of describes what the Bachelor of Arts programs is. It's more for like AI, and it's just a little bit different than what you would expect from a bachelor's of science. So I've heard around that people may want to apply, for example, to the Bachelor of Arts Computer Science and then, shoot their shot in transferring into the EECS program. That's definitely not a good way to go, because as you would expect, electrical engineering, computer science at UC Berkeley is very competitive and it's not easy to transfer in. And you might be stuck doing a major that you don't really want to do 100% just because you took that route. So make sure you really look into the majors and apply thoughtfully and carefully. And yeah. Next slide. Okay. So another tip people usually have is having a theme for your application. So what is a theme? So in the admissions officer's eyes, there are many components of your application to keep track of. So one way to stand out is by having a cohesive theme that kind of glues all parts of your application together instead of like having random and disconnected parts. So you're going to have a consistent thread that appears throughout your application that reveals your passion or personality. For example, if you want your theme to be, oh, I'm passionate in neuroscience, so you're going to show rigorous STEM courses on your transcript, specifically maybe in the sciences and STEM courses. And then you can highlight your experiences in an internship or lab related to neuroscience in your main essays, and then maybe even volunteer service. And it doesn't have to be about a subject, it can be about a personality trait. But one point you want to highlight is that it appears in all main parts of your application. So it's like cohesive, and then the admissions officers can see what really makes you stand out through that one point that you're trying to convey. And the next one is recommendation letters. So who should I ask to write my recommendation letters? You should choose one STEM and one humanities teacher from 10th or 11th grades, and choose teachers who can highlight how you perform in competitive environments to show how you academically stand apart from others. What this means is that you should choose a teacher that an AP teacher or an honors teacher. That's what I would recommend, and that's what people usually do. Instead of maybe like a US history teacher, you can choose a AP World teacher, or instead of a pre-calc teacher, you can choose an AP Calc teacher. Like choose a teacher from an AP class where you enjoyed, participated, and performed well in. Therefore, they can write how good of a student you are basically in a competitive environment. So when should I ask them about recommendation letters? Generally, teachers let you know about their process for recommendation letters towards the end of your junior year, but you do want to keep tabs on it and like email them and make sure you're keeping up to date, because sometimes teachers only have a certain amount of slots or a certain amount of people they're going to write recommendation letters from, and you don't want to miss that. So yeah. And the last topic is college counseling. So there's two types of main college counseling. So there's big college counseling companies. Here, these companies offer packages with various services. This can begin in ninth grade or even the summer before your senior year. The services can include help with your essays, guiding you through the college application step by step, or the whole thing between ninth grade and the time you submit your college applications. These are generally pricier. I did not go with the college counseling company, so I'm not 100% sure how they work. But what I've heard from my friends is that you're generally assigned one college counselor, but one pro from going to a company is that there's a team of counselors working behind the scenes with your individual counselor to make sure that you have a stronger application or better essays and whatnot. What I did was go with the private counselors who can guide you with individual services, but they usually guide you through the entire application process. I started mine junior year, like towards the end of it. And they also offer packages. This can begin in ninth grade or even the summer before senior year. These are generally more affordable because it's just one person working with you on your application, and it's also more focused. My experience with a counselor is that sometimes you might not find your counselors like worthwhile, because they have a lot of people to, even like private counselors, they have a lot of students that they work with. So sometimes when you need like last minute help, they're not gonna directly be there for you. So what I did was, while I had my private counselor to guide me through the basics of college applications and the basic essays, one of my mom's friends helped me revise my essays, and she really helped in my experience more than my counselor, because she went into detail to like up to like each sentence of my essay to like make sure that each sentence was worth like there for a reason, and my essay was just much better overall after receiving help from her. So that was my experience. And if you have any more questions, you can email this email, or someone can drop the Q&A link in the chat.
Okay, so I'm going to read the questions that we've already received, and then as we receive more, we'll go through them. First question is, how important are SAT and ACT scores?
Okay, I can talk about this. So for SAT, ACT scores, they're a part of your application. They're part of your academic part of your application, but one thing to note is the UCs do not take it at all. It's not optional or anything. They're blind. They're test blind. They don't look at SAT or ACT scores at all. And now outside of the UCs, you want to check each school, whether they do accept it in the first place. And I would generally say if you have like a pretty good SAT score, to go ahead and submit it instead of going test optional or not submitting your SAT, because they still show like your academic profile. So yeah, I would submit it, and they are too important now that everyone a bunch of schools are going test optional, but I would still submit it.
Okay, the next question is, what is the minimum GPA for transfer applications? Is it just only high school or also college credits that are included?
Okay, I can answer this. So the minimum GPA for transfer applications is not fixed. It varies between colleges and it varies between majors. So for example, computer science at, let's say, UC Berkeley would have a minimum GPA of around 3.5, whereas other like arts and humanities majors may have a minimum GPA of around 2.0 or 2.5. And again, it varies between major, it varies between college. So you'd want to look at the assist agreements to see what the minimum requirements are for each individual program that you're trying to apply to. And the second part of the question was, is it just high school or college credits included as well? Yeah. Are high school credits included as well? No, you only need to submit your college credits that you've taken, and the minimum eligible GPA is calculated based on those college credits that you've taken. You do not need to submit any high school coursework.
All right, third question, do high schools give resources and guidance about the different options for colleges?
Yeah, they do. My school, I went to Lynbrook High School, and my school had something called a College and Career Center, where there's like these two staff members or college advisors, I guess, that are part of our school, and if you had any questions regarding the entire process, you can go ahead and ask them.
Some colleges also actually like visit the high schools and give presentations, so you can directly ask admissions officers and representative of colleges that visit your high school if you have any questions about a particular college. Does the TAP program offered by UCLA have restricted majors?
Okay, I can answer this. So yes, UCLA TAP does have restricted majors like TAP. And for like I mentioned earlier, if you're doing the honors transfer program with TAP, you are only restricted to majors within the College of Letters and Science, which is the main reason why I didn't do the UCLA TAP. I wanted to do the College of Engineering. So you would want to look into that. TAP is mostly geared towards the College of Letters and Science. They do offer a variety of majors, and you can even substitute some with, like for example, if you wanted to go do TAP for computer science, you can't do it for the computer science in the College of Engineering, but you can apply to linguistics and computer science, which is in the College of Letters and Science. So definitely do your research, and there are certain majors which you can do TAP for, which may focus on your interests.
All right, what are some good extracurriculars for someone going into pre-med? I can answer this. So generally, if you're interested in like subjects like biology, physio, whatever it is, you can tutor those kinds of subjects to younger students. You can even TA those classes at your school. You can volunteer at a hospital, your local hospital. You can ask to shadow doctors. So if you have a doctor in the family or a friend, those are easier ways to get shadowing opportunities. You can also volunteer at clinics. So I know some clinics actually allow students to volunteer. So this could be like an optometry clinic, a dentist clinic, a regular family clinic, and it really just depends. So you kind of just have to call or email them to see what opportunities are available. What else? Yeah, I would say tutoring relevant subjects and volunteering are the majority of where you can participate, but also there are some like summer programs, summer research programs. So some universities, I think like UC Davis, UCSD, they have like summer programs where you can actually go onto the campus and do research projects. And those can be related to medical research. So those are things that you can look into. But some of those you probably do have to pay a lot of money for. So those are less affordable options. But I would really strongly suggest looking at volunteering opportunities in clinics or hospitals. After this session, can we reach out for help via email? Yes, so the email listed on the screen is our college prep team. So we're building a network of students who have currently gone through the college application process, were in college and have completed college. And so if you email that college group, it'll go to our network of students, and we can definitely reach out and answer any questions or help with essays and different sorts of things that come up during the college application process. What is the difference between early apply and regular apply? So like early decision, regular decision.
All right, so there's generally three types of, there's like a few more, but generally there's like early action, early decision, and then regular decision. So I guess the earlier apply you're talking about is early action. So I have personal experience from this. I applied to almost every single college early action. And what this is just you apply early. So what happens when you apply early is that you don't have to submit your grades from senior year because again, you're submitting it in November. And what happens is you get your decision earlier, like in January. So this was very beneficial for me, although it was very taxing to finish all my essays by November 1st. When it came around to January, I was very relieved because I got most of my decisions within January, February, for schools outside of the UCs. The UCs only have one application date, so this doesn't apply. And the regular decision is usually around January. So that's when the regular decision date is, and then you'll get your decisions around March, April. One difference is that sometimes for certain schools, early action gives you a little bit of a admissions, like it helps a little bit for certain schools, or so I've heard. So maybe if you're super interested in a certain school, you want to apply early action.
So just to add on to that, I think there's also, so there's early action and regular decision. There's also early decision. So early decision and early action usually have the same timeline, but there's one key difference, which is that if you apply early decision to a school, let's give an example school, for example, Santa Clara University. Let's say you do early decision to Santa Clara University. That is the only school you can apply to early. So early decision is exclusive. That's the only school you can apply to as an early school. And the reason for that is because if you get into your early decision, not early action, early decision school, you have to go there. It's binding. So you're contractually obligated to go to that school. And the point of this is basically, it's twofold. For you, it's to basically help you. If you have like a dream college that you really want to apply to, if you don't really care about any other college, well, not that. It's like if there's a dream college that you would go to over any other college, this is what you want to do, right? ED, early decision. Also for colleges, it helps identify like really committed students. That's why ED application rates are almost always a lot higher, the admissions rates. For example, at Brown University, which is one of the best schools in the nation, the ED acceptance rate is almost like 11%, but the regular is 2%. So you could, be increasing your chances a lot. But it's twofold, obviously, because a lot of better applicants apply ED as well. So that's what ED is. Along with ED, there's also something similar called REA. So REA is just like ED in the sense that you can only apply to that in one school early. But in REA, which stands for restrictive early action, it's not binding. So if you get in, you can either go or you don't have to go. It's not contractually binding. So an example of schools that have that are Stanford and Harvard. Those are the two that come off the top of my head. And you can apply to those, but they don't really increase your chances that much. So unless it's your dream school to go to an REA school, I wouldn't really focus on that. ED is a great option if you're really decided. But other than that, most people benefit from a mix of early action and regular decision schools.
All right, next question. Can you recommend any private counselors?
So private counselors, I found mine through my mom's colleague. That's how I only know that one. But if you want to find private counselors, I think the most common way is word of mouth. Like people who've already been through the college experience. So I can't personally recommend any others except mine. But that's what I would recommend for anyone who's looking for a private counselor, to ask other people who've gone through the private counselor route.
Which recommended community college has the TAP program for specific majors? How does one find out? And I believe it says, what is the help of asking a college counselor? So separate question.
Okay. So the TAP as an application is binded towards UCLA. It's not specific towards a community college. So different community colleges, you can apply from any community college, but the requirements will stay the same because it's the TAP is offered by UCLA and not by the community college. If you're doing an honors program with the TAP, like for example, at Las Positas College, which I did, you would need to apply to a major within the College of Letters and Science, and you will also have a requirement to complete 5 honors courses, maintain a 3.5 GPA. So those are some things you have to research for each different community college, but the TAP as an application, it's not specific towards a community college. You can go to UCLA's website and see what are the requirements for that. And what was the next part of the question? Community source specific majors, how does one find out? Yeah, so if you can find out, like I said, by going to the UCLA website, seeing what majors are there, what requirements you need to meet. And if you want to do the honors program, that's what you'd have to look at on the community college website. And help of asking a college counselor, in my experience, college counselors aren't really that experienced with TAP, but you can definitely try going to your community college counselor and ask them, hey, can I get more information about TAP? What can I do to increase my chances of getting accepted through TAP?
What are some good internships for computer science and engineering?
Okay, I can answer that as well. So good internships, I mean, software development, machine learning, data science, those are some ones that come to mind. And you can get these internships through a program, a software known as a Handshake. So that's a website you can apply to. Most community colleges will recommend it on their own. So you can go to Handshake, see which internships match with you, and you can go apply there. Community colleges will also have career fairs which you can attend. But in my experience, those don't help. Then that's because most companies want to hire interns that are in their at least second or third year. And if you're applying to a computer science specific internship, they most likely want you to complete a course in data structures. So if I'd say first complete that course in data structures, and if you really want an internship, you'd want to ask one of your someone you know who will be able to refer you or get you an internship. Other than that, there's other substitutes for internships because those are generally hard to get as a community college student. So you can do a tutoring session for computer science courses for like local high school students or something. I know one of my friends who did that, and he was able to get into UC Berkeley for computer science. So you don't necessarily need an internship for getting into top universities. You can definitely find other substitutes like working on personal projects or teaching it to something that shows that you're deeply involved with computer science.
Do part-time summer jobs help in your application, such as store associates, or something that's not really related to your major?
Definitely, yeah. If it's at the end of the day, it's work experience, and I tutored with not the subject that I applied for at college, but I was still able to talk about it in my college application. It's just lessons I learned, and it shows like work is not easy. Like it's not something like, even for volunteering, if you have a last minute issue, you can maybe cancel the session or postpone the session, but work is much more professional. So it does show another part of you that it's like mature and like ready for that kind of environment. So I would say work experience is always good, even if it's not related to your major.
I want to add on to that. If you've done a job where you faced difficulties or you've got some sort of leadership opportunity or something like that, those are things that you can use to write about in your college application. So even if it's not something that's necessarily related to the major that you want to do, if you've improved as a person through that experience, it's certainly something that you can write about and seen as valuable from the point of view of an admissions officer. Next question is, what are some college prep things you should do during your sophomore year? So sophomore year of high school. You can go ahead and answer this too. So if you're looking at private colleges, you want to look into standardized testing. So SAT, ACT, colleges that you're interested in applying to, if they require standardized testing, you want to start preparing for that and signing up for those because it gets full really quickly. So one of the things for testing specifically is look at that ahead of time. Second thing is start looking into extracurricular opportunities if you haven't already. So again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a sport. It can be a volunteering opportunity. Join clubs at your school. This is a good time to really get involved in one or two clubs that you are really passionate about. Community service is another big one. You want to rack up those community service hours during your sophomore and junior year specifically. And of course, as always, keeping your grades up. Really focus on your grades, especially your sophomore and junior years. What is the benefit of taking advanced courses like English 1A? There's more to it. Hold on. I learned it's not giving honor standards, and my major in college will be science. So do I really need to take English 1A in my freshman year?
I can comment on this, I guess. There was a similar situation for us in my school. There was like an advanced English course that a lot of freshmen would take. It was called, well, it wasn't English. It was like English and debate and writing and that kind of thing. It was called rhetoric. And a lot of people ended up still taking it because just how valuable it was. Now, what I will say is not everything you do with regards to course selection has to be in preparation for college. You know what I mean? So you don't have to be, you don't have to take or not take a class because it's related to your major in college. Now, if you just don't like English, then I don't think there's a reason to take honors English. But if you think it'll help you become a better writer, if you're somewhat interested in literature, then I would say go for it. There's no reason to restrict yourself from trying different things out, especially if a lot of other people are doing it and they say it's good. You shouldn't restrict yourself. Not everything in your course selection has to be geared directly towards your major. So I'd say if there's not another class that you would rather take, go for it.
And I'd like to add on to that as well. If taking English, any advanced English course is going to help you in the future no matter what, because any field of study is going to involve writing and being able to read. And also, one more thing is that once you get to a four-year institution, you still need to do no matter what your major is, you still need to do a general education pattern. So taking an advanced English course sometimes might be able to cover for the general education English courses at the four-year institution. So it will still help in the future if you decide to take it.
I completely agree with what he said. Like, English is always important, and you should always try to take advanced English if you're interested and if you can, because I learned through my experience that I didn't have any opportunity to take advanced English courses in freshman year, but I did junior and senior year. And what I realized is that they helped me become a better writer. But some of my friends, they chose not to take advanced English classes or 2 years in a row because it was just not their strong suit. So I would prioritize getting better grades, but it does have its perks.
All right. What is the requirement for taking world languages in colleges? Do I really need a 3-year credit?
I talked about this in the last presentation, but it depends on what school you're applying to. Generally, for high school graduation, they require 2 years, I believe. But some schools like this is an example, but I think Harvard recommends 3. And what they mean by recommend is that they really look for 3 years. So it depends on each school you're applying to.
How do you start tutoring?
I'm not sure if this question is following on to what I said about the internships in computer science, but in that case, you can start tutoring pretty much any way you want. So you can go up to, you can start your own, you can start with like family and friends, say, hey, I'm offering a tutoring in this specific subject. If you want help, feel free to reach out to me, or you can reach out to a private organization, and that's what I did. So someone I know who owns a private academy which does after school tutoring, and I went up to them and asked, hey, can I do a tutoring course in computer science? And they agreed to it, and they said, hey, submit me, give me a curriculum, give me a flyer, and I can do some advertising for you. I ended up not going through with that because of my busy schedule, but there are opportunities out there for doing tutoring if you're not able to get internships.
Can I still do the CHESP exam in my junior year and transfer to community college for my senior year?
Yes, you can. To the CHESP, you don't. There's no like fixed timeline where you take the CHESP and you have to graduate after 10th grade. You can take the CHESP anytime, and once you pass the CHESP, you can exit high school. Even during the middle of the academic year. So yes, you can take it during your junior year and skip out your senior year and start the 2 years of community college. You'll still be 1 year ahead of the rest of your class.
And last question as of right now is, is there any advice on catching up over this summer? I'm assuming with courses specifically.
I think if you mean that, if you're referring to taking extra courses in order to get ahead, I would say, like, when it comes to just regular high school courses, in 99% of cases, you don't need to do that. You can achieve the number of courses you need just throughout the summer. I mean, just throughout the school year. I don't honestly think taking courses during the summer is really necessary or even, beneficial. I think you might get burned out. I think what's better to do in the summer is to focus on opportunities that actually connect to your interests. For example, like doing a research project, if your interest is computer science, doing something related to that, doing a project, going to a summer camp, doing a personal project, a hobby, whatever it is. I don't think it's really necessary in high school, especially, to take summer courses.
Adding on to that, the only reason where you would want to take summer courses is if you want to graduate early, which in general doesn't have that many benefits, but if that's something you want to do, you can go ahead and do summer courses to catch up on some credits.
There's
So
a
follow up
follow-up.
here. Yeah, go ahead.
People from private middle schools get to go to World Language 2 and Math 3 and so on. How to catch up to them. Okay. I think so of course, like the first year you come in, right? Let's say if you have a person that's, that came from private middle school and they come in and they've already done a couple of years of Spanish, and they're in Spanish 3 as a freshman. The next year they do Spanish 4, then what are they going to do? There's ultimately nothing they can do after that. So I guess you can catch up to them if you want, but there's really no point, because after you're done catching up to them, there's nothing you'll be able to do the next 2 years. So for example, all like courses are meant to be completed within 4 or 5 years, like language wise, right? So there's no point in like catching up just to have a year less of Spanish, when you could just take the slow route, slowly learn the Spanish, and finish in 4 years. The other people from the private school are doing those same 4 years. They just did it earlier. So there's no reason to compress that into a shorter time frame, especially when there's nothing after that. So there's nothing you're missing out on, is what I'm trying to say. By catching up to them, you're not really missing out on something. And I'll say the reason because of that is, the reason for that is just because Yeah, okay, I see your question, right? People use the extra time that they get for more AP courses to boost GPA. It seems that way, but actually the schedule is not really built that way. For example, you could get ahead because of, you know, let's say you're ahead 2 years in your language, right? Then you can't just take an AP course in something else. You have to take a course in that language for like Spanish honors or Spanish AP. And that Spanish AP course is accessible to you even if you take the normal 4 year course, right? 4 year progression. So you're not really missing out on anything by not being ahead of other people. And also 90% of the students are going to be at that same level and they still manage to get access to a wide number of APs. So I see what you're saying. People seem to use the extra time that they get for more AP courses to boost GPA. Ultimately, I'd say it's going to be very hard to both balance taking summer courses and finding time for extra AP courses, which aren't even guaranteed. So I'd say it's not really worth it.
To add on to this question, I feel like there's two categories. One category is that maybe during your school year, like your GPA dipped for whatever reason, and GPA is a strong part of your it's pretty much, I would say, the most important part of your application. So if your GPA truly is there was some sort of dip during the school year, maybe it would be beneficial to take a course or two to help boost your GPA. But that's only in that scenario. In other scenarios, I understand what you're saying. Like some people take advanced math. Like sometimes my friends would take a math over the summer. But what I saw and experienced was just because they took another extra math over the summer, or they finished math 1 year early, that didn't boost their application admission chances by all that. So I would recommend only taking courses if your GPA really needs it.
Also, one more thing is that GPA varies from each institution. So the way GPA is calculated at one college may not be the same as it's calculated in another college. And what you really want to focus on is your unweighted GPA over your weighted GPA, because the unweighted GPA is on a 4 scale. So you can't go above 4. And if you do poorly on an AP class, that's going to bring down, that's going to negatively affect your GPA as compared to getting an A in a regular course.
Also, with regards to getting to those higher level of APs, like I think you seem to be concerned about like calculus AP, right? How to get to, you have to do pre-calculus, algebra 2, you have to do geometry, you have to do all of that to get to calculus AP, right? And for Spanish 4 AP, you have to do 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those are really, like, those languages and math are really the only two examples where the AP course is conditional on how far you've gotten. Everything else, you like biology, language arts, history classes, any science, physics class, you can just take with almost no prerequisites. So I understand your concern, but in almost all cases, you can get access to the same amount of AP courses that everyone else could get access to. Good question, though.
All right, and as of right now, this is the last question. What does a college application need for a high prestigious medical college for bachelor's degree? I'll go ahead and answer this one. So the medical school application system in the United States is a little bit different, where you have to go through a 4-year degree. So from high school or community college, you go to a 4-year university. And then from that 4-year university, you apply to medical school, which is another 4 years of an entirely different school. So if you're applying for a bachelor's degree now, what you do now will not necessarily affect what medical school you get into. So there's nothing that you will put on your college application as a high school senior or a community college transfer that will affect the medical school that you get into, because that is not the sequential application that you're using. You're applying for a bachelor's degree, and so the major you choose may end up affecting what you get into for medical school, but the extracurriculars you put on your application, the test scores that you put on your application, the classes you took in high school or community college are not necessarily going to directly affect your medical school application. So those are two different things. And I believe that wraps up the questions that we received. We have about 15 more minutes on the clock, so we can leave the Q&A form open for another couple minutes to see if there's any last minute questions. But I think that about covers. Oh, one more. Any advice on a kid who thinks he wants to go to medical school? I can answer this one. I did the exact same thing. So I really wanted to go to medical school all throughout childhood, high school, even undergrad. And in high school, a lot of the volunteer opportunities, extracurriculars, things that I did revolved around doing a major in college that would relate to medical school. So I did bioengineering in undergrad. And then halfway through undergrad, I wanted to switch into just regular biology so I can apply to medical school later. I didn't end up doing that, but you can change your mind when you're in college. So for example, if you're in high school and your child really wants, or your child is in high school and they really want to go to medical school in the future, and they're working towards that right now by applying to a major where it's like something that you would use to apply to medical school, they can go ahead and do that. Their college application, again, what you do now doesn't necessarily transfer into where you'll apply to med school. If they change their mind in university, that is totally okay. They have time to do that in university. You can change your major, you can go completely different pathways. I know people who started off as pre-med and finished with computer science degree and are now software engineers. I know people who went through a computer science degree for all of college even. They've done a job as a software engineer and then later on have changed their track completely and decide to go to medical school. So in terms of med school, at least in America, it's pretty flexible in terms of time frame. You can go at any time, you can change your mind at any time. But again, it is, I would say, prudent to maybe not change your mind multiple times, just because while you're still exploring, there is a lot of time, effort, and money involved throughout the high school and college process. So yes, you can change your mind. There is time to figure everything out.
I kind of want to, I can speak on this a little bit too, because I went through the same thing. In freshman and sophomore year, I was like, I'm definitely going the medical route. I'm going to be a doctor. And then sophomore year comes around, and then sophomore year, the summer before junior year comes around, and I completely switched my path to business CS. It wasn't, I'm grateful that I was able to make the decision at least before junior year, because obviously the courses you take throughout high school kind of depend on what kind of path you're going to take. So I would suggest that you finalize what you want to do by junior year, just for the sake of your application, so your application is stronger and you have extracurriculars towards the path you're applying to. But once you get into college, like she said, it's a little bit more flexible.
Is it easier to transfer from community college to?
Okay. Well, yes and no. The acceptance rates are slightly higher for community college transfers compared to first-year students, because there is a lower amount of transfer students applying compared to first-year students. However, there are more strict requirements. So you have to maintain a minimum GPA if you want to get into the schools that you want to get into. And also the transfer admission process is more selective compared to the regular first-year admission process. So to answer your question, it depends on how you define easier. So hope that helps.
What are the top 3 things kids can do in their 10th grade, sophomore year to prepare for college admissions? We got this question earlier, so same thing, looking into standardized testing if you're applying to schools where that is required, getting really involved in clubs and extracurricular activities and community service. So freshman year is where you're kind of getting your footing. If you found opportunities like summer after freshman year, really get involved in them during your sophomore year. And then of course, major focus on your grades. So that is I would say number 1 thing is to keep your grades up. Everything else is secondary. What is the most important thing I can do in my junior year of high school to prepare and apply for college? Do AP classes or college courses look better for college applications? and which is more beneficial for college credits.
I can start answering this question. So, do I think AP classes, I would say AP classes look better for college applications because you take them at school and there's like one standardized test, and generally people try to take like AP classes that suit what they're applying for. And college courses are taken outside of school. So I would say AP classes that you take at school would look better. And which is more beneficial for college credits? I would say AP classes, because no matter what AP class you take, each institution has like a transfer credit. Maybe they don't apply to your major, but for college courses, which I went through, I took a few college courses in the summer. I go to my college and they say I can't transfer it over. But for AP classes, that shouldn't be an issue. Yeah.
Just want to add on to something there. So for AP classes, particularly each college, depending on your major, will like give you the credit for those AP classes that you took. So for example, if you are a computer science major in a certain university and you took like 10 AP classes, the likelihood of you getting credit for all 10 AP classes, even with really good AP test scores, is pretty low. Whereas for community college classes, if those are transferable, and I believe Adil had talked about this previously in our previous presentation too, if the community college classes that you took are transferable to the university that you were applying to, then you will receive college credit for them. Whereas with AP classes, you don't really know until you get to the college whether you are going to get credit for every single class that you took. So for example, I took AP Calc, AB, and BC in high school, but in college, I didn't get credit for them. I had to take calculus again because of the major that I had.
And also, if you want to make sure, you can also go to the website I mentioned, assist.org, and go check which courses articulate from your community college into the university that you're trying to apply to. For almost all the UCs, you can find the list of every course that articulates. And also, in my personal opinion, I find community college classes to be easier than AP courses. So if there each has its pros and cons, so definitely look into it and see which suits you better.
Okay, we're getting a couple more questions. We're going to speed things up a bit. Are private high schools better than public high schools, especially in Milpitas?
Okay, I went to a private high school, so I guess I can start to answer this. The high school next to my house is not very good. It's actually one of the worst in the Bay. It's James Lick. So I could have gone there. I didn't want to, and I had this opportunity to go to a private high school, and my parents were. I'm grateful, super grateful that my parents were able to pay that. But when it comes to private high school, oftentimes the experience you get when it comes to purely academics is not super different than what you'd get at public high school. So I'm going to make that distinction first. Academics wise, it's more up to how you are as a person and how you choose to study, at public versus private. So academics wise, I don't think you'll get much of a different experience. Now, where the real differences I'd say is in extracurriculars, service, like community service, and getting connections, and things like that, and a sense of community. So I think, first of all, like sports, you get a lot more support for sports. You get a lot more, probably attention for sports or funding for sports, I'd say. So if you're really interested in sports, maybe that's an opportunity you look at. There's a lot of they really help you with applying yourself community service wise. So they literally gave us like a huge list of community service opportunities, gave us resources and funding to start our own community service initiatives. They connected us to people in the community. They, gave us phone numbers, emails, meetings, whatever you need. And then college-wise, honestly, I'd say, uh, in a sense, going to a private school can honestly harm you a little bit in college-wise. Um, so I really like going to a private high school because of all the benefits that it got me as compared to my local public high school. But I think it doesn't exactly give you a benefit in terms of college applications. Number one, because private high schools often have restrictions when it comes to applying to colleges. So I was only able to apply to 13, even though I wanted to apply to a lot more. And also, a lot of times, like UCs, for example, have a policy where they select, certain number of students from each public high school. That doesn't really apply to private high schools, so it's kind of more like free for all. So, keep that in mind. It doesn't, if you're expecting that going to a private high school can help you in college admissions, I wouldn't say so. But there are a ton of benefits, both on community service level, extracurricular level, and sports level, that I would say it helps with. Academics wise, it's basically the same, private and public.
Okay, we've got 2 more questions and then we're going to stop there. First being, can we only switch from one major to another major in the same department in college? And can you please explain the logic between switching? So this differs from college to college. For example, where I went to school, or a lot of colleges, they have different colleges within the college. So like College of Letters and Science, College of Engineering. I did bioengineering in college and I did end up switching my major to a different joint major, but it was within the School of Engineering. So it made the switch easier. Now, if I had wanted to switch from something like I think Shahana mentioned this earlier at Berkeley specifically, if you want to switch from computer science, which is in the College of Letters and Science, to electrical engineering and computer science, which is in the College of Engineering, that's going to be a harder switch because you're switching not only between majors, but between departments and colleges. And so it really depends on the college that you go to. But if you change your mind in university, there are ways for you to switch your major to something that you want to do by taking those classes, getting the grades you need to switch majors. This does not mean you should go into university with the intention to switch your major. So like mentioned earlier, you shouldn't apply for something that's considered an easier major and then try to switch later on. But it is definitely possible if you change your mind in terms of what you want to do in the future. And then last question is, what would you all do differently if we had a time machine and could go back through high school in order to prepare for college?
I can start answering this question. For me, if I could go back in time, I guess, I would research more into what schools provided the program that I was looking into. So I wanted to do information systems. And the problem here is that UCs don't really offer this program. So I didn't realize this until my junior year or summer before senior year. So I guess if I could go back in time, I would do more research into what schools have good information systems programs.
I think I would try to focus on prioritizing things that I was actually interested in rather than trying to do too much. I think one thing that I faltered at, or like one thing that I didn't do great at, was trying to present myself or like trying to do things that I was actually interested in. I was kind of all over the place. I was doing, a bunch of different activities all over the board, a community service activity, research, this and that, a bunch of clubs at school. Ultimately, it was a lot of activities. I think I put like almost 16 activities on my UC application. But I think the overflow of activities didn't help me in the end, because ultimately colleges don't want to see like a robot. They don't want to see someone who's just, been pumping out accomplishments and trying to be all over the board, trying to do too much at one time. They expect you to be a normal kid. They expect you to have, one interest that you're super interested in. They expect you to have a fun, lighthearted hobby. They expect you to go out with friends. They expect you to, have a social life. They expect you to be authentic. So that's the number one thing you have to do. That the number one thing I would try to do more of, or that I would do differently, is try to be more authentically myself in the application. Like, kind of make it simpler and more related to my personality and who I am, rather than the things that I've done.
I guess I'll answer this as well. I'm gonna focus this towards the transfer route because I don't regret taking the transfer route at all. One thing I would do differently if I were to go back 2 years would be checking for the professors. So if you're in a community college and you want to take community college courses, definitely do check on professor ratings on Rate My Professor, because professors do matter a lot if you're in the subject you're learning. And a bad professor can either uh, like make the learning difficult for you, or you won't be able to learn as much, or they might even have a harsher grading system. So I think that's something I would do differently. And you can also look into taking courses at multiple community colleges if the course, if your community college doesn't have like a course with the right professor that suits you. So you can also, that's something that I would do differently as well if I could go back in time.
And I'll round out here. If I were to go back and do something differently, it would be to not overload myself in high school. So trying not to balance too many like extracurriculars or AP and honors courses, because at one point there you will reach a point if you've overloaded yourself and it gets too overwhelming where you physically and mentally cannot handle it anymore. Your grades will either suffer, or your extracurriculars will suffer, or you will suffer. And so really trying to balance what you can do and not overload yourself. So don't compare yourself to people who are taking 6 APs in a year versus people who are taking 2 APs or no APs. What it matters is your personal journey and how well you go through it. And so getting those grades up is the most important, but sometimes it's harder when you have too many AP classes. So don't compare yourself to the person who has more than you. Focus on your own grades and your own self and your own journey. So that about wraps up the questions that we got, but the email address is completely open for anybody who wants to ask more questions or wants more specific advice on their college applications that come up in the future. But Jazakallah khair everyone for joining.
Alhamdulillah, as we are arriving the closing moment of the remarkable event, Alhamdulillah. So it is a really great effort our youth team put, and Jazakallah khair for everyone who are worked tirelessly for this event. Jazakallah for joining everyone. Alhamdulillah, this college event is not like giving, it is just a shade of initial basics. If you have any doubts or any clarification, if you need, please reach out that email which is shared in the PPT. Jazakallah khair for joining everyone. Inshallah, we will meet in the next event.